As a new player, a raid and escape from Tarkov can seem daunting and stressful. New players must learn how to find loot, navigate intricate environments, and survive unpredictable and often quick engagements with all types of enemies. One of the most single and most important parts of Tarkov is the combat. Aside from the looting, aside from literally everything else, combat is the focal point of your success in Tarkov because that is going to be the make or break on whether or not you survive. Everything else is kind of up to you. Combat is something that can kind of be out of your control, but if you take more control of your decision making and what you're doing in certain situations, that's the best way to improve your overall survivability. Every Tarkov player has the same woes starting off. So, the dreaded PMC and scav encounters, your boss fights, looting, the overwhelming resource management and resource utilization and decision making. It's a lot. So for new players, just focusing on getting better at the combat takes a big stressor off your back when you can readily rely on yourself to be able to take down scavs no problem. You're not getting head-eyed by the scav with a shotgun anymore, and be able to at least take down PMCs that are your level. You're still going to get smoked by those chads that are running around with a slick and an airframe on, with a mutant running BP 762, but you'll at least be able to kill the weekend casuals that are coming in that are the same level as you, the same boat as you, and that'll take a lot of stress off your shoulders if you can improve your combat skills. The harsh nature of the combat system is the single most difficult part in Tarkov in my opinion, and therefore mastering it or making improvements will significantly improve your survival rate and overall experience with the game itself. So I've compiled a group of tips and tricks to help improve new players' overall combat style in this video. We're going to touch on, how to approach certain situations and decision making, movement, resource utilization, looting, what kind of ammo to use, and so on and so forth. That can all kind of wrap into how you can improve your combat style in EFT. However, for you experienced chads out there, this video is probably not for you. Although I would appreciate, you dropping a like, comment, maybe even subscribe as well, and leave some comments below this video if you agree with my tips and tricks for early white players or newer players, or if you have your own tips and tricks that I didn't cover. Leaving your own stuff on the video might help somebody later on when they come watch and they can see the comments as well as the video itself. So without further ado, I really appreciate you all stopping by, and let's just jump straight into it. Maps in Tarkov are extremely diverse, allowing the player ample choices when trying to determine which path is best concerning moving throughout the map. However, what most new players do not take advantage of is the diverse environment of Tarkov that was created by the devs. Utilizing pieces of the map such as bushes, trees, cars, walls, fences, different paths, and different locations, and so on to spring an attack on your enemy, disorient them to your location, disengage to lick your wounds, or turn the tide of a firefight is key to becoming a better player overall in Tarkov and to improve your overall combat skills. Understanding how to utilize certain areas of the map is entirely dependent on how well you know that area. How could you possibly utilize an area on the map without fully understanding what that area is comprised of? Are there trees? Are there bushes? Can I jump up on top of things to spring an attack on my enemy? Where's the enemy going to be hiding if I go in here? If I know he's in here, where's he most likely to be? Knowing where certain types of surfaces are in your area can tip you off to the exact location of your enemy. A perfect example is the Office of Factory. On either side, there are dead giveaways to where people are. There's crunchy glass on the left if you're sitting in the office facing the hallway, and crunchy glass on the right. On the left, if you hear it, that person is right outside the door to the office you're in. On the right, the crunchy glass means they're on the first flight of stairs, or the last flight of stairs before your level. Knowing these little key tips and tricks and kind of knowing like where different surfaces are in certain areas of the map will significantly help you identify where your enemy is, where they're going, and where you should be likely to look to find them when you go to push them or if they're pushing you. Conversely, knowing this will also help you move through an area more effectively. If you know there's a ton of bushes in your path but you're following closely behind an unsuspecting PMC, it would be best to move slowly or pick another way to move, or know you have to dance in between the bushes so they don't hear you coming. One of the biggest mistakes I made as an early EFT player, and really still do to this day, is that I play way too fast for my own good sometimes. There has always been a stigma against players who take their time and play tactically, which I personally think is ridiculous. I think that there is room for both playstyles. There are people that are good enough, like Landmark or Lupo or Pestily, that can run around and just W key and run you over. But for average players like myself and my friends, It's best to try and find a good mixture of what's best. There are times when you should be playing like a Chad and W key people and push, and there's times when you should play patient, let your enemy make the first move. Playing with patience is a major key to success for early EFT players, as it allows you to take in more information about the given situation and will often provide you with more opportunities than just straight rushing into an unknown. Because you're not familiar with the map, you might not be as good with mouse and keyboard. Like for instance, myself, I learned how to play mouse and keyboard with Tarkov, so I didn't do a lot of pushing my first wipe. It allows you to kind of take your time and set yourself up for success, whereas, the big guys who have been playing this game for years don't need to do that. Limiting the amount of time you sprint around the map and knowing where to sprint and where not to sprint is a huge part of this tip. Sprinting makes the most noise that you could possibly make without firing your weapon. 1, makes it easier for others to hear you, and 2, makes it much harder for you to hear anything around you. If you're sprinting and there's a guy, 20 yards to your right who's walking, just regular walking, you're probably not going to hear that guy, but he's sure as hell going to hear you. Slowing down your movement just allows you to pay closer attention to sound cues that you may not otherwise hear. I'm not telling you to crouch walk everywhere. That's not the answer. Each player has to find their own balance of the movement types and speeds that fit best their playstyle. I personally like to sprint in open areas that don't have a lot of hard cover or concealment, and usually walk with my ears open in any area I haven't explored before or I haven't cleared. The last thing you want to do is sprint into a building you haven't cleared, because if somebody's in that building, they're going to hear you sprinting, they're going to stop moving. But if you walk up, I've noticed, at least in Tarkov, slow, like just regular walking, not even slow walking or crouch walking, regular walking is deceptively quiet to most people. There's been many instances where I've walked right up behind somebody and they didn't even hear me. And that could be a Tarkov audio issue, but I like to think it's because, you're not sprinting around everywhere, so they probably don't hear you. Never underestimate the power of waiting. Taking a pause to listen for sound cues or giving your enemy time to make the first move is often a good way to A, gain information on your enemies, and B, allow your enemy to make the first mistake. Allowing your enemy to make the first move sometimes is not the right idea, depending on your situation, but you're going to have to learn when that's a good opportunity and when it's not. Learn when you're in an advantageous position and learn when to utilize that advantageous position and take advantage of your enemy and make them make the first mistake and come to you. Overall, playing with patience, allowing your enemy to take, the first step sometimes, and just making sure you're paying attention and listening. Stop to listen. Don't be afraid to stop in a room and listen in a building to see if you can hear anybody. Doing all of those things will significantly help you survive more. Tarkov is a game that is all about information. Whoever has the most information is generally going to win. If you and I are fighting and I don't know where you are, but you know exactly where I am, I'm already at a disadvantage. And playing with patience is a very good way to collect that key information that you're going to need in order to survive more of those firefights. Tarkov has a slew of options when it comes to armor, weapons, food, clothing, loot, upgrades, and maps. However, the single most important choice that you will make as a new player each raid is the type and tier of ammo that you use to go in and use for your combat. EFT introduced a mechanic that most average FPS players are not used to, and that is the difference in ammo effectiveness. Each ammo has a different caliber, such as 9x19, which is your regular 9mm, 7.62x39, which is your standard 7.62, 5.45x39, which is a different AK variant, 5.56, which is your standard 5.56, 338 Lapua, 7.62x54, 7.62x51, and those are just the calibers. And then each one of those calibers has 5 or 6, maybe even 8 different tiers of ammo effectiveness that kind of set them apart from one another. And each one of those different tiers has different body damage and armor penetration stats. And so when you go into a new raid, the one thing you need to pay attention to is, well, what is the caliber I'm using, and what is the body damage and penetration stats of the caliber of the tier of the certain caliber that I'm using. The type of ammo you're going to use will significantly affect your ability to take down enemies, both scav and PMC alike. So therefore, your choice should not be taken lightly. And frankly, always spend more money on the ammo than anything else, especially starting off. If you're doing a budget kit, such as like a Vepr Hunter, and you want to go in with and you have the option to go with level 4 armor all up and down your body, but in order to do that, you're going to have to use the worst 7.62x51 ammo. I would rather go in with a P.A.C.A and a level 2 helmet with M61s or M62s, which are the highest, or which is one of the best ammos for that gun, because when you hit somebody, you're gonna kill them. Whereas if you're using the other ammo, you're not. So that's just another little nugget of advice, is I spend more money on your ammo than anything, because that is gonna make the true difference between you killing someone and you not killing someone. Especially later in the wipe when everybody's running the best ammo anyway. It's not gonna matter what armor you're wearing, because they're just gonna kill you through your level 6 slick anyway, because everybody's gonna be using M993 and M995 and all up and down the list. So we already touched on how each ammo type has a different caliber, such as 7.62 by 3.9, and they have different flesh damage and penetration stats. It's very important for new players to study the different types of ammo, their names, their stats, their usefulness against different armor types, and so on and so forth. I have a link in the description for an updated ammo table for this wipe that can be used to help you better understand this complex topic. I could make a whole video series about the different ammo types and their what they're good against, what they're not good against, which ammo types are the best, which ones are the worst. So I'm just going to link that in the description, and you all can go in there and kind of take a look at it. It's best to internalize it, but it really just comes with practice. As new players, it is imperative that you pay close attention to the ammo you're using, as it should dictate the fights you avoid and the fights you take. For instance, if you're running an M4 with M855, which is one of the worst ammos for the M4, you may want to reconsider running headfirst into dorms on customs after a couple months into the wipe cycle. In the very beginning of the game, sure, go for it. Everybody's wearing crap armor, nobody's wearing anything good. Half the people are probably running around naked anyway. But if you're running in there, 3 or 4 months after wipe, you're probably going to run into somebody with a slick and an Alton on, and you have no chance. You literally have no chance. Because he's probably running M995 or SSAAP, and you're going to get one tapped and there goes all your stuff. Ammo selection can be the difference between winning and losing a fight. Your maneuvering can be pixel perfect, you can hit all your shots, but if you're not spending the time and money to ensure you have good ammo in your gun, you're going to lose that fight 9 times out of 10. So please take my advice, internalize the ammo chart, learn which ammos you're good with, learn which ammos tiers are really good against certain armors. Always consider spending more money on your ammo when you're doing a budget kit, or even in general, than you do on your armor or your gun, because that is going to make the true difference in winning those combat situations, regardless of any other factors. Next up, we have budget loadouts. So just as I touched a little bit on it in the previous tip, budget loadouts are something that you're going to utilize a lot as a new player. The weapon and ammo you're using is equally as important as a deep understanding of the map that you're playing on. New players need to find a good balance between power, effectiveness, and budget. Utilizing cheaper, less modded weapons with better ammo and medium tier armor is the best way to mix survivability with effectiveness and combat effectiveness while staying in the confines of a low budget. You only start off the game with 500 rubles, a little bit of US dollars, and I'm not sure if you start with any euros or not. So making every ruble count, especially since the flea market got moved from 10 to level 20, you're really not going to be making a lot of money starting off. So you need to make every raid count. And going in with, kind of medium tier armor with a medium tier modded gun and great ammo is a really good way to put down scavs and PMCs and really go from 0 to hero, get in with a little bit and get out with a lot. You're trying to maximize your profits in the early game. That's all you're trying to do. As I said in the previous tip, ammo selection plays a huge role in your success in EFT and plays an even bigger role in the effectiveness of your budget loadout. Like I said in the previous tip, if you're focusing all your money on level 4 or 5 armor and then you take in an MP5 with PST GZH, you might kill somebody, but if they're running the same gear as you, no shot, you're dead. You're gonna lose all that stuff. And so you need to find a good budget and a good mixture of armor, ammo, and gun. The ammo you're using will make or break the loadout and should be the most expensive part of it, as I said previously. For example, let's say you need to get some scav kills on customs, but you're hoping to maybe snag a geared PMC if possible so you can get some good stuff to run out. You want to run a Vepr Hunter because it's a good budget gun, it's cheap, you can get it from Prapper, along with some cheap level 4 armor and a helmet maybe from Ragman or maybe one that you already found. So far your kit's pretty solid. However, if you decide to use the BPZ FMJ rounds, you're going to be pretty disappointed when you struggle to even kill scavs that are wearing, P.A.K.As or level 3 armors. Instead, you should opt for M62 or M61 to ensure you have stopping power needed to kill moderately to heavily geared PMCs, and frankly, M61 and 2 are going to kill heavily geared PMCs no problem. In this situation, if you're really hurting for money, it would be best to lower the amount of armor you're wearing in exchange for better ammo. If you can go in with level 4 and M61 and M62s, that's great. But if you're really hurting, don't ever cut back on the ammo type. because you can have the best armor in the game and pump somebody full of Quake Maker and they're not going to die unless you're shooting them in the legs. Never cut back on the ammo you're using. Always cut back on the armor first. Because if you get the drop on somebody, you don't need armor. You know, you're gonna have to play a little slower, you might have to be a little bit more careful around scavs, but as long as you're not getting shot, you'll be fine. The budget part of the loadout is always the armor and the weapon. You never want to skip out on good ammo. I've placed some good budget weapon and ammo combinations in the descriptions, ones that I've used, some that I've picked up from other YouTubers, and you know, just I'm gonna look for another budget loadout video to come in the coming weeks. I'm probably gonna go in and create some of my own, or maybe find out some other ones, maybe try and get some ones that are under 100 or maybe under 150,000 to put together, and then, you know, just look for that in the coming weeks. Budget loadouts are one of the single most important things in your combat experience if you want to balance power with money, so that you're not, you know, broke after 1 week of trying to grind out those early wipe tasks, especially if it's just killing scavs or if you're just trying to get some easy PMC kills. Budget loadouts are so important. Another mechanic that's relatively new to most new EFT players, and really anyone who's only played those, you know, canon FPS shooters like Battlefield and COD, are that if you die, you actually lose something. Everything you take in on your PMC run, you lose if you die. Aside from anything that you get back from the insurance from Prapper, whose premiums are higher than someone with the $1 million home insurance, if you die, you're not getting any of that stuff back if somebody takes it. Enter gear fear. A newfound anxiety that all EFT players, aside from the super rich, have to deal with. Gear fear can be defined as such: the fear produced by the idea of losing good items, weapons, and gear that causes most EFT players either not to use that gear or to play extremely passively and slowly in fear of losing that gear to a scav or another PMC. Gear fear is a huge and a very difficult hurdle to get over as a new player. One, because every raid counts in the early game as you have limited supplies and limited money with really no income stream. And two, because you don't want to lose that sick M4 and that awesome slick armor that you got 3 weeks ago on one good raid you had. Overcoming gear fear is pivotal and mandatory for growth in EFT, and failing to do so will significantly hold you back when trying to become a better player. Gear fear generally will make you play more cautious, slow, and careful to a degree that's actually harmful to your success rate. I want to caveat that with playing slow and playing cautious is not a bad thing. But you'll notice if you take stock of your past games and your past decisions, if you're having gear fear, you're playing slow in situations when you shouldn't be. And you're not even expanding your mind to other possible decisions like, oh, maybe should I flank here? Should I throw a grenade? Should I push this guy now that he's looting? You just sit there and you're frozen. I know this because I've just now recently gotten over gear fear. And I used to just sit there. I could hear a guy looting and I would just sit there because I was like, I don't want to mess this up. I just kind of want him to go on and I'll go by myself. So you need to take stock and pay attention to when you're actually being affected by gear fear and try and overcome that. Additionally, gear fear will generally make you terrified to make aggressive decisions in fights. Like I just said, even if you know they're a correct decision, you still won't do it. It'll make you feel attached to the gear you have, make it harder to eventually use it and get rid of it. You'll become attached to that M4 and you'll be like, well, I don't really want to use it because it's so cool. And you just won't take it, and it'll collect dust in your stash for a month. And you're going to be hamstringing yourself into using less than the best gear that you have, causing you to, one, spend more money on buying gear from other traders and other people when you have gear in your stash, and it's going to make it easier for you to die and harder for you to actually be successful because you're not going to be buying level 5, level 4 armor from people all the time. You're going to be going in with crap, and you're going to be, so you don't have to use and eventually lose your good stuff, and so you're going to be hamstringing yourself. I can't make you get over gear fear though. This is something each EFT player must do on their own. However, a few ways to get over it that I have found to be, you know, generally useful for myself are, once you get good enough at the game, start forcing yourself to play aggressive. And I guess a precursor to that is get good. And I hate to say that because that's like a Dark Souls term, like, you know, you just have to get good. But a couple things that you can do to, you know, get better at the game overall is run offline raids. Learn the maps, learn the environments, learn, you know, all the other tips, learn the ammo, learn your guns, learn your surroundings. Go into an offline raid by yourself and run around and try and play aggressive in an offline raid because there's no repercussions. You're not going to lose anything. You know, go into an offline raid and explore different maps. Educate yourself. Make it easier on yourself. And that will make it easier for you to play more aggressively in those different situations in a real game. Obviously, play aggressive in an intelligent way and in the right situations. Don't just W key straight into dorms without doing anything to actually clear the rooms. But once you get good enough at aiming and actually decision-making and stuff, start forcing yourself to play more aggressive and get out of your comfort zone. Get used to and desensitized to dying and losing your stuff. And that goes well with the above. The more you play aggressive, the more likely you are to die. That's just, it kind of goes hand in hand. And you have to get used to and desensitized to dying and losing your stuff. You can't allow yourself to get attached to the things that you have. You cannot allow yourself to become afraid of dying. So play aggressive and die often. And eventually you're just going to go, screw it. I've died so many times today, I just don't really care. And eventually something's going to click where it's going to be like, oh, well, I can notice that I can get all this stuff back eventually. Pick a few raids per session where you force yourself to run your best gear with your best ammo on your best map. Play with friends and do this. You don't necessarily have to do it yourself. I always don't take my best gear when I play by myself because I don't play by myself all the time. Pick if you're doing a 3-hour session, pick okay, well, each hour I'll do one raid with my best stuff on customs, which is my best map. And I'll just see how it feels and see how it goes. And eventually that'll get you used to using that good stuff, and it'll show you the benefits of actually using that stuff. You'll be like, wow, I got shot in the face, but good thing I had a face shield on. That was great. Understand that as quickly as you can lose it, you can get it back. I touched on that just a little bit earlier, but take stock of the raids where you go in on a budget kit and you get out fully geared and thick. And keep that in the back of your head when you're running your best gear. Be like, okay, well, I got this slick and I got this airframe and this sick AK last week on my budget kit when I was just using a Vepr Hunter and a P.A.C.A. because some dude was just chilling in the middle of the hallway and I popped him. And the same thing could happen to you, and you could lose your stuff, but take stock of the fact that the next raid, you could get all that stuff back. Or, a week from now, you could get all that stuff back. So just take stock of Tarkov is an ever-evolving, ever-changing environment where opportunity is always present to make back the money you just lost. And then finally, and probably the most important one, is prioritize your experience over all else. It is the only thing that carries over after the wipe. And that is not my own idea. That is something that another YouTuber, Swamp Fox, said that stuck with me, that helped me get over gear fear, is that when this game wipes in 6 months, all that stuff that you lost is not going to matter. The only thing that's going to carry over with you to the next wipe or the next season or whatever it is going to be the experience that you gain. And so play aggressive in those situations when you think you shouldn't. Lose that stuff. Learn from it. Because that experience is the only thing you're going to carry with you on after the wipe, and that's going to help you get better. And so take stock of all these things and kind of internalize them and kind of just know your environment and get better at the game and just do what you need to do to overcome that gear fear, because that's just going to hamstring you in the end. Aside from learning the maps, understanding the ammo, and dialing in your own specific playstyle, it is imperative that you get a lot of practice with the various new and not so new mechanics of EFT that you may or may not be used to. If you're like me, you learned how to play mouse and keyboard on EFT, which is probably not something I would recommend doing. If you're weak at aim and movement because you're not fluid on mouse and keyboard and you've played on an Xbox controller your whole life like me, try playing on some other FPS titles like Battlefield or Call of Duty, or even offline raids in EFT using mouse and keyboard to try and get better at, using all of your fingers and trying to understand how to do it. I would definitely recommend doing offline raids in EFT because it forces you to use the mechanics and use mouse and keyboard, but you're removing that very harsh reality of I'm going to lose all my crap if I don't get out of here, or if I make a mistake, and then you can learn from it. You could also try doing warm-up games before you jump into Tarkov to get your fingers and brain calibrated and working to mouse and keyboard. One thing that I like to do before I ever started playing Tarkov, or before a Tarkov raid, was I would go into an offline raid, and I would just do a quick offline raid. I would chat around and I'd kill everything I saw just to get nice and warmed up and get my brain focused, get my fingers working to make sure that, everything's working as it should, and that would help me get better at mouse and keyboard or decision making or whatever. And ensure you're running your scav between each PMC to obtain gear, money, and really further practice your mouse and keyboard skills so that when it comes to run a PMC, you're good to go. These next two tips are very important, and they're just going to go together because I think they go hand in hand in their own right. Learn from every death. Tarkov sessions can bring you to the highest highs and the lowest lows. A lot like Dark Souls, it's unforgiving in nature, can be extremely taxing on your morale and your mental state, and it can really drive you crazy, honestly. My biggest piece of general advice in this situation is to keep a positive mindset and just make sure you're learning from every death, especially as a PMC. Each time you lose a fight, there's something to be gained. Each time you die, there's something to be learned from. Either your opponent outplayed you, you were too aggressive, too passive, you missed your shots, you got teamed up on, etc. Every single death has a short story or a long story to tell, and in order to get better at EFT, looking into and understanding that story is extremely important. From personal experience, you can always do something differently. You could have played a fight better. Even if you win, you can still have played that fight better. You could have still not made certain mistakes. So taking the time to sit back at the end of the raid and really just kind of go through it on your own, or if you recorded it, watch it back, kind of like film in football, or if you have a friend, talk through it on like, okay, well, in this situation, we were kind of bunched up. Maybe we should have flanked around, or we heard shots from that area before, but we just kind of ran over there. That's why I got head eyes as soon as I entered Crack House or whatever, because there was people in Fortress and we knew that. Going over it with your friends on what you could have done better will always be beneficial for both parties into understanding what you could have done better and kind of learning from that death, or even learning from a success. What did I do well? What do I need to keep doing? I was really aggressive in this situation and I got Peeker's advantage because of desync and I killed that guy. Now, you're understanding those things, that you're reminding yourself now of those good habits that you need to be creating. And especially when you die, other than when it's from BS, you got head eyes from across the map, you never saw the guy on woods or some shit. I played too passively. I sat in this room and waited for this guy to come to me and he was just nading all around me and he had Peeker's advantage, like stuff like that. So just take stock of things you can do better, things you could improve on, and things that you didn't do that maybe if you did do would change the outcome of the fight, and that will really help you. The next one is having a short memory. So they kind of go together, but they kind of don't at the same time. Just as it's important to learn from every death and kind of hold on to those experiences and learn from them, it's also important to let go of those mistakes after you've taken the time to learn from them. So, make sure you're taking stock of those things that you've done and making sure you're taking stocks of the things that you've done good and things that you're not doing so good, but let go of the mistakes once you've learned your lesson. Don't get into a negative mindset, a lot like, I played baseball in high school. If I struck out, I would let it bother me for the whole game. And you cannot do that because it'll affect your next at bat. So think about it in that regard. If you go into a raid and you make a mistake and you die and it was a stupid mistake and it was and you knew you shouldn't have done it, take some time, take 5-10 minutes, learn from it, and then jump into another raid. Don't go back into that raid with a bad mindset and beating yourself up, because then it's going to affect your next at bat, if that makes sense. Take stock of your mistakes, learn from them, and then move on to the next raid with a clear mind. Every raid is an opportunity to make up for those losses or past mistakes, and it needs to be treated as such. Go in with a clear mind, a clear understanding of what you want to do, and just let it go. When you go into that next raid, that's a perfect opportunity to make up for it or to not make that mistake again. Learn and let go. It's the best way to keep moving forward in your progression as a player, both new and experienced, and it's equally as important as overcoming gear fear, because beating yourself up and not learning from anything is a really good way to just kind of get trapped in this endless cycle of repeating the same mistakes over and over again, which will just make you resent the game. That kind of, wraps up the tips and tricks video. I really hope you guys found these tips and tricks to be helpful. If there's anything I left out, or if there's anything you'd like to see, any other guides you'd like to see out of me, please do drop a comment and let me know. The next one that comes out is probably going to be PvP loadouts, but if there's anything else, any comments, concerns, or questions, please do drop them in the comment section below, and please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stop by my Twitch. It's linked in the description. I stream pretty much daily at random times, normally just whenever I can, at least for right now until I hit affiliate. But stop by for a chill Tarkov stream and drop a follow, and we can hang out, and we can even maybe run some raids together. But I hope you all appreciated the video and liked it, and I will see you guys next time.